Hey, welcome to Think Thursday from the Alcohol Minimalist podcast. Think Thursday is all about your beautiful, brilliant human brain. We're talking neuroscience. We're talking behavior change. We are talking about your mindset. Are you ready to get started? Let's go. Hello, and welcome to Think Thursday from the Alcohol Minimalist. Have you ever watched the show Friends, or do you know about the show Friends? I did not realize that the show Friends, every single episode was titled "The One That" or "The One Where." Um, "The One Where," I think is the way it starts. So, "The One Where." And so I don't know why this is coming to me today, but this episode, or Think Thursdays, I should say, are the ones where we talk about science forward mindset shifting stuff that is really all about the psychology behind creating sustainable change here on the Alcohol Minimalist. So this is a little different than regular episodes dropped on Mondays. And I am, of course, still Molly Watts. I am your host, and I'm here to help you understand your beautiful, brilliant human brain. And today, specifically, maybe why it sometimes feels kind of clunky, awkward, and frustrating to create behavior change. I think that's something that we can all agree on, right? Let me ask you something. Have you ever thought, I know what to do, so why am I not just doing it? If so, then this episode is definitely for you because that question, that tension between knowing better and doing better, that's not a character flaw. It does not mean that you are broken. It does not mean that you lack willpower. It does not mean that there's just something wrong with you. It's simply the human experience of learning and how change works in our brains. And today we're going to be breaking it down with something called the hierarchy of competency. And this model will really give you a roadmap for change, one that shows why it feels so hard at times, why you want to quit, why things eventually get easier if you just keep going. And if you've listened to the podcast for any length of time, you have definitely heard me say that before. The key is to keep going. That doesn't mean about just alcohol. That's anything you're trying to change in your life. And to help bring this all to life, we're going to walk through the hierarchy of competency with a story that I've created about Mary. And Mary is, of course, a fictional but very familiar, I'm sure, woman who's trying to build a consistent movement habit after years of being sedentary. And her journey will help you see how this really can apply to any change that you're trying to make, whether that's drinking less or eating better, moving more, improving your mindset, all things that require you to change go through this hierarchy of competency. We're going to take a quick look at the history of it and this model and what research in neuroscience and behavior psychology tell us about how we move from struggle to peace, right? Because that's what we all talk about. I talk about is that peaceful relationship with alcohol and what that actually means when you look at it from the lens of the hierarchy of competency. So, the hierarchy of competency uh, originated back in the 1970s. Now, I don't know about you, but I'd never heard about it. I heard about it first listening to a book. Everybody knows I am a voracious reader. Typically, these days, I do listen to audiobooks as opposed to reading books, physical books. But either way, the brain is it's proven to be very beneficial for the brain. And I love to read. But I had never heard of the hierarchy of competency. and was introduced to it. And I thought, oh, I love that idea. I'm going to share that on the podcast. It originated in the 1970s, is widely attributed to Noel Birch, who was a trainer at the Gordon Training International Company, which is a company that was focused on communication and personal development. And it was developed really to explain the stages we all go through when we are acquiring new skills, and more importantly, to help basically normalize the emotional challenges of learning new skills or changing habits. There are 4 stages that map this journey, right? From being basically clueless to being very confident when you are trying to develop a new skill or acquire a new habit. The first one is the lowest level of the hierarchy of competency is unconscious incompetence. Unconscious incompetence. You do not know what you don't know, so you don't do anything, right? Number 2 is conscious incompetence. Now, this is when you realize that you don't know, that you might want to be doing something, but you don't know how to do it. You don't know how you should be doing something different. You just kind of have started to hear that it might be good for you too. The next stage was one that we are all very familiar with, and that is that you are trying to incorporate this new behavior, this better behavior, this new habit into your life. And you're trying, but you're struggling. It takes a lot of effort, and you are seemingly continually making, taking set steps backwards, or experiencing off plan events. In my world of drinking, I would say off plan drinks, right? You know what to do. You are doing it. You are trying to be good. You are consciously competent, but it takes a lot of effort to stay mindful. And then the last stage is unconscious competence. And that is when the behavior becomes automatic. That is when it becomes your default, when you are completely at peace. The model has been embraced in coaching therapy, education, leadership development, and more recently, research in metacognition, our ability to observe our own thinking, confirms that knowing where we are in this learning process increases self efficacy and it reduces anxiety. All right, that was from a study in 1999. So, being able to understand where we are in this process and understand that it is a process actually increases our efficacy, and it reduces that distress that many people feel when things don't go so well. So that's another reason that I wanted to describe this model to you. Now, let's make this story a little more real by following Mary, our fictional character, and as she works on this model to incorporate a new behavior, building a regular exercise routine. All right? I don't know about you, but let's just say this is something that I feel like I am definitely not yet um, consciously, unconsciously competent with. I have been stuck in conscious competency for a long time when it comes to incorporating movement into my life. But let's talk about Mary. All right. Stage 1, unconscious incompetence. When we are here, we are not even aware that there's a problem. For Mary, this looked like saying things like, I'm just not the exercising type. I'm active enough running errands. So she didn't connect her poor sleep, low energy, her brain fog, her weight, anything to her inactivity. She didn't see exercise as essential to her well-being, and she kind of just normalized feeling kind of meh, right? One day, a coworker mentions that just 20 minutes of walking a day reduces the risk of cognitive decline. And Mary hears this and something just clicks. Her mindset shifts and she begins to notice the gaps between her behavior, her lifestyle, and what this coworker has told her. She doesn't walk 20 minutes a day, and she's certainly concerned with developing cognitive decline. So this is where stage 1 ends, right? She's no longer unconscious. She's still not doing anything, but she's no longer unconscious. It's where awareness begins. You hear me say all the time, we cannot change what we cannot see, right? We have to create awareness. And that's what happens first. So in unconscious incompetence ends, and stage 2, conscious incompetence, begins. And this is where it gets uncomfortable, where many of us really just want to turn back. Mary's aware now. She knows that exercise would help. She even buys some walking shoes. She sets a New Year's resolution, right? She joins a gym, but then nothing. She keeps skipping her morning walks. She avoids the gym. She feels defeated. And she says things like, I just don't have the motivation. What's wrong with me? I'm lazy. Now, this is not a failure, okay? This is a textbook sign of conscious incompetence. You know what to do, you're trying, but you don't yet have the systems to do it consistently. And according to behavior scientist BJ Fogg, who we are going to talk about later in another episode, this is where most people give up. Not because the behavior is impossible, but because they expect mastery too soon. And the brain hasn't built the wiring yet. So, and P.S., if you listen to Mary's self-talk, I just don't have the motivation. What's wrong with me? All of that negative self-talk lacks curiosity. It lacks self-compassion. They are the wrong, that question, what's wrong with me? That's the wrong question to ask. It is a question that leads to feeling defeated. It leads to feeling negative emotions about yourself instead of what's one thing I'm willing to do today that takes me in the direction of the change that I'm trying to make. The good news is for Mary is that Mary doesn't quit, thankfully, and she does decide to try just 10 minutes a day instead of 20 minutes a day. All right? She doesn't decide that she can't, that's just her new baseline. She adjusts, she iterates, she makes a smaller change. And because she doesn't quit, but she keeps going, she moves into a different stage of change. All right. This is instead of being consciously incompetent, so that we are no longer, we are aware, but we're not yet doing everything that we want to be doing, right? That is where we go into conscious incompetence. We move now into stage 3, conscious competence. Mary sets an alarm. She lays out her walking clothes the night before. She listens to a podcast, maybe even this one, while she walks, and she starts stringing days together. But it is still effortful. She still thinks about skipping, right? Her brain still tells her, this doesn't feel like I'm doing anything really, especially when it's raining or cold outside. She doesn't want to go for her walks. And this stage is really all about practice. The neural circuits for this new behavior are still being formed. And I say it all the time, it's the repetition that creates your sustainability in terms of change. It's not about willpower, it's about the wiring. And when the repetition is what is going to create that new neural pathway. Mary's consistency is the key here. And she leans into celebrating the effort, not the outcome. That's really the difference, right? The mindset. That is the special sauce here. We've got to accept ourselves that this feeling of peace that we're searching for, it comes over time with practice, with repetition, and because we change our mindset about what we are actually doing, not pushing our mindset out, waiting for something to happen, but looking at what we are doing and celebrating and being positive about our effort. Lastly, one day it finally happens. Mary wakes up, she laces her shoes, and she starts walking without even thinking about it. It's just what she does. She's not relying on checklists or motivation anymore. The behavior is just baked in. Her identity has shifted. I'm someone who takes care of my body. I feel better when I move. This is just a part of my life. And neuroscience calls this automaticity. One study out of the University College of London showed it takes an average of 66 days to form a habit. But you know what? That number can stretch up to 200 plus days, depending on the behavior. And that's from another study from 2010. Nobody's behavior change journey is the same. And especially when you have a habit that's been baked in for decades, to get to unconscious competence, do not expect that to happen overnight. You can get there through consistency, not perfection. Let's bring it back to you, all right? Whatever habit you're working on, maybe it's drinking less, eating more mindfully, meditating, exercising. This week, I really want you to identify your behavior and your current stage. Are you unaware, aware but not doing, effortlessly doing, or are you doing it automatically? Number 2, normalize your discomfort, especially if you are in conscious incompetence or conscious competence. You're exactly where you're supposed to be right now. Everything, it's okay. And normalize that discomfort around wherever you are in the hierarchy of competency. Number 3, support yourself like a learner, not a perfectionist, right? Use tools, tracking, environmental cues, rewards, accountability. Use all the things that help us to remain consistent. That's what being a learner is all about. It's about becoming someone who accepts their missteps as an opportunity to learn, uses self compassion, uses curiosity to understand which stage they're in and why they aren't, where they want to be yet, or how they can take a small step towards creating sustainable change. Number 4, visualize. Ask yourself what it will feel like when this does become automatic. What will your future self say to you? And number 5, make sure you are practicing and celebrating those micro wins, the next small doable action, not the ideal outcome. That is where we want to focus on those small steps that we're taking and really celebrate ourselves for taking those steps. The hierarchy of competency shows us that change is a skill, and all skills can be learned. That is what I want you to take away from this. It gives us language to replace shame with strategy and reminds us that struggle is just not a problem. It's a part of progress. If Mary can go from sedentary to consistent, you can go from habitually drinking to mindfully choosing. You can change what you once believed was unchangeable. And you can do it with self compassion, science, and support. If this episode resonated with you, come share what stage you are in inside the Alcohol Minimalist Facebook group. You can also just DM me on Instagram, or I'd love for you to email me, molly@mollywatts.com, and tell me where you are and, where you're going with regards to any habit that you're trying to change. And if you're ready for more structured support through all the way to conscious competence, take a look at Making Peace with Alcohol. It's built exactly for this journey. That is all I have for you this week, my friends. Until next time, choose peace, keep practicing, and I will see you on Monday.